Hello and welcome to the November Encore stream. Today we're looking at the elements of tone. I welcome you. If you're wondering, it's Monday and you're streaming, what's going on? I don't understand. Things are confusing. Things are strange. This is actually more normal than you might think if you haven't seen one of the Encore streams before. So as you might know, every week we take a look at the week's DLC. We play through those songs. We talk about them. But then at the once a month, at the end of the month, like today, we will discuss a more sort of niche topic, something a bit more specific that wouldn't fit into the format of our usual weekly stream, and that's what you're about to see today. So today we are talking about tone, what makes up your tone, what you can do to adjust and seek out the tone that you're looking for, and to do so, I would like to introduce two of the Ubisoft San Francisco's resident tech heads, Dan Amrick and Brian Pody.
I'm a tech head?
You're a tech head. You're a gearhead. I said tech head. I meant gearhead.
Oh, yeah, that's because I don't know how it works. I just know what I want.
I thought you knew things.
No, why am I here?
Perhaps we should reconsider.
Where is my mind? Available now.
So welcome, both of you.
Thanks, Doug.
So the sort of inspiration for this month's Encore stream was a question, actually, from a previous weekly stream where someone, which may have been Totally Not Fio, I'm not 100% sure, but Totally Not Fio has changed their name to Tonewood Fio.
Ha! So that probably was.
Could be. Asking basically about Tonewood and what that meant and what wood does for one's tone, I believe was the question. I asked the question to Greg Studley. He didn't know what I was asking. I didn't know what I was asking. It wasn't until later we discussed it. We discussed the question.
Well,
and somebody did know what the question was.
After the show, I said, what the hell kind of question is that? Because it's a very large question and it's potentially a very controversial question.
Yes.
It's not something that's easily answered in the context of, hey, I have a question for, guitars. It's sort of like, how is Babby formed of guitar, right? Like, you need me to explain conception and birth? I got 3 minutes, sure.
Well, turns out we have an hour.
Yeah.
So we're going to argue about it.
We're going to argue about it. So I do want to preface this discussion by saying both of these people, as far as I know, are incredibly knowledgeable about guitars and the tones that they can create and how to get those tones.
Pody is.
What I want to know.
Okay.
And I'm just going to put this out here to begin with. Dan, can you hear the difference in the size of the metal flake on your guitar?
Ooh.
No.
Is that why you go for sparkly guitars?
I go for sparkly guitars because they inspire me to pick up and play. I mean, it's funny because we've got a couple of, we'll be talking about various different aspects of guitar, not just tone wood, but we'll talk about pickups and amps and some stuff like that. But as our sample guitars, it is suspicious that most of the sample guitars are brownish in color and not sort of Dan's finishes where it's got to be loud before you plug it in if you want me to buy it. So. No, I can't. But I was very impressed when I woke up one day and realized that, like, for instance, I could hear a song on the radio and say, "Oh, that's a single coil. Oh, that's a humbucker." Mm-hmm. And then as time went on, it was like, "That's a semi-hollow with a humbucker." Like I could, you start dialing that in, and I don't. There's no way to do it fast. You can't just suddenly go, "Oh, well, now I understand tone." Yeah. And I still don't understand tone. I'm not really a tone snob, but I can differentiate, and I know some of the stuff that seems to make a difference. And then, of course, as you said, we'll argue about it all hour, because just starting on the idea of tone wood, it's controversial because some people say it makes all the difference in the world, and some people say it makes absolutely no difference. It's the other parts of your chain, your amp, your pickup, that all matters. It doesn't matter what it's made of. It can be made of whatever.
So for that preface, getting back to that, I do want to say what we're going to talk about here is mostly coming from, I'd say, an educated opinion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
sure.
We're not going to be talking in absolute. Well, Pody's going to be talking in absolutes because he's always right.
Maybe listen to Pody more than you listen to me, especially.
Yeah, or me.
Because this is a great showcase of my ignorance, which is always fun.
This is definitely one of those, like, the common thought is, or the common belief is, you will find people that disagree, and you will find experiences that you've had that counteract some of that school of thought.
So you'll be learning the sort of accepted answers, if not the
and we can debate how definitive those things are.
And if you have questions throughout the stream, please reach out to UB Jurassic. That's Brian Turner. He's the community manager based in North Carolina. He's taking over this stream. We do not have Blackwood 9 with us today. We have Brian, that is UB Jurassic. So if you have questions for these two, just reach out to him. and he'll get those questions to me, and maybe I'll ask him some of them. And Brian will also be doing several giveaways for DLC throughout this stream, so keep an eye out for those. He will just be able to sort of unleash those at his will. So
I realized we didn't have him plugged in, so he can't do pinch harmonics nonstop through this whole
we can still
stream.
do them. They just won't be
Damn it, we
heard.
should.
Are you plugged in now?
No. No, we're not plugged in. These are more visual props
Okay.
because we wanted to talk about some of the differences and things. So
We're here to talk about guitars, not play guitars.
That's fair. That's
all right.
fair.
So is it fair to start with wood? To start with tone wood?
I think so.
What the concept is. Most guitars, and we're talking primarily electric solid body guitars. I don't think I want to get into the chaos of what's the difference between this and bass, and then arch tops and jazz guitars,
so
and
this,
semi-hollows.
we're talking explicitly six-string.
Yeah, unless otherwise stated, we're thinking 6-string electric guitars, Stratocasters, Les Pauls, whatever this is. This is an Epiphone Wilshire. I know what it is, but I'm just saying most
Sure you
people probably don't. Sure you do.
With a Batwing headstock.
With a Batwing headstock, that's
Which is
right.
pretty.
So the idea is, and this is the controversial thing, some wood is better than others.
Okay. Sounds like a reasonable statement.
Right, except it's not.
I mean, I would argue that some wood is different than others.
That is what I would argue too. So
Better.
this is a terrible debate if we agree. I agree with my opponent.
Better is a matter of taste.
Yes.
And that's the thing about tone in general, is it all comes down to taste. And is your taste good or bad?
There are certain things that are accepted as fact, and they come out of, I believe, more from tradition than anything else. So, like Fender guitars, Stratocasters, Telecasters, they're usually associated with woods like alder and ash, American hardwoods.
Depending on the era.
Yeah, depending on the era.
And whatever they could get cheapest.
Just a moment. Could
That
you
truly is.
bring your microphone a little bit closer, please?
Is that better?
That's much better.
I
Thank
assume
you.
you didn't mean me.
No, you're good.
Yeah. At the same time, Gibson generally did stuff out of mahogany. Their bodies are mahogany.
Yeah. And
Neither one is better.
No.
They're just different.
No, and I think Gibson is coming out of a tradition of building acoustic
Acoustics.
guitars
Yes.
and other instruments. So those are the woods that they were familiar with
Right.
from
What
that.
wood do we have? What wood do we know? Oh, then let's make our big, heavy electric guitars out of that because more wood equals more sustain, right?
Mahogany is actually a fairly light wood.
Yeah.
If it's properly dried.
And then Carina, which was used on the classic 50s, like the Flying Vs and the weird-shaped guitars, if you will, that's like mahogany but with a little mid-range bump.
Yeah, it's the,
So
the
there are
super mahogany.
Yeah, there are certain resonances that you get with these different woods, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you take a piece of babinga that's super dense and a piece of Spanish cedar, which is related to like Honduran mahogany, which is super light, and you just tap on them, they're going to sound different. They're going to resonate different.
And that's the key word. When I was thinking about what to say up here, I was like, the resonances are different. As long as the wood itself is resonant, I don't think it matters so much what it's made of. I've got a guitar right now that is a very large piece of alder. It's got 2 humbuckers in it. I plug it in. Those pickups are sort of vintage voiced, which means that they're like low output. They're similar to what they would do in the 50s rather than like a modern sort of hard rock or heavy metal kind of pickup. Sounds like a Les Paul to me. I know it's alder. I know it's a giant piece of alder. It's just it doesn't. It's not. Oh, that's not mahogany. Like it just. There are other factors. But I think that the fact that tradition has dictated that certain woods, well, that's the way that Gibson did it, so that's the way you have to do it. Or this guitar is not as expensive as that one, and it uses a different wood. Therefore, this cheaper wood is bad wood, which I think is a terrible misnomer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what you get into with cheaper guitars is the wood isn't prepped as well. It's not going to be dried as well, and instead of being made of 1 or 2 pieces, or in the case of a lot of Strats, 3 pieces,
Yeah.
It's going to be made out of 70 pieces.
Right. It is actually not uncommon that your cheaper guitars are going to be a jigsaw puzzle where they take a whole bunch of pieces of wood, glue them together, clamp it. When it dries, they cut it, and there you go. And then they put it in a pretty sparkly finish so that you never see the grain.
Right.
There is some visual stuff. Ash does not look like alder. Alder is not necessarily attractive.
This is alder.
Yeah.
You can tell because the grain's a lot tighter than if it was ash.
Right.
Ash
but
has a much
Ash
wider
has
range.
big swirly kind of things about it. Mahogany, like Gibson would stain mahogany cherry, and so you get this sort of. Well, I suppose this is probably.
That's some sort of Asian mahogany.
Yeah,
It
it's
looks different.
mahogany-ish. But it's just more of tradition. Things were done a certain way because that's what made sense. But then you have woods that people say, "I'll never play a guitar." With basswood or basswood, have we decided how do you say it?
I've decided that it's basswood.
All right, then I will go with you.
Sure. Yes.
And I think we looked it up, and the internet agreed.
I don't remember looking it up anymore. I know that we did, but I don't remember what the answer was. So yes,
I do want to get some clarification.
Yeah.
You're talking specifically about the body of the guitar, right?
yes.
Not the
Mostly.
neck or the fingerboard.
Some of these woods are also used for the neck. Depends on the guitar. Mahogany, Gibson uses mahogany as the neck.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Although all that 70s classic rock, Gibson was building guitars with maple necks.
Oh, okay.
3-piece maple necks. They went back to
Well, then maple
to
wins.
mahogany later.
Well, that's maple. I mean, maple, you can generally tell immediately that it's maple because, for one, it's plentiful, and for two, it's this light yellowish wood, sometimes tinted more amber than not, sometimes almost white, like modern satin necks. The guitar I bought this weekend has a satin maple neck, and it's almost white compared to sort of like vintage necks where they've yellowed with age.
Yeah.
So, yes. So, in addition to that, I mean, fretboards were traditionally either made of maple, and might be a one-piece maple neck, or it might be a maple neck with a maple cap on top. I have a few guitars like that. Again, generally more affordable. Eddie Van Halen's neck, the famous Frankenstein neck,
The
was
all-parts neck?
all maple. Yeah, but it was a maple with a maple cap.
Uh-huh.
So once again, it's like maybe it's what you do with it, not how it's made. But rosewood was for years the primary wood used on darker necks with a more open grain. You have to care for them differently too. But now, as mahogany has become a more rare wood and harder to find, and under certain global
CITES.
restrictions, yes,
Yeah.
CITES, which is the this governing body that says where you can ship wood around the world, and there's all kinds of legal hoops to jump through.
And it's great because if you ship a rosewood guitar somewhere where you can't, they destroy it.
Yeah.
Which is a great use of the wood.
Yeah, rather than just charging extra or something, or charging you a penalty, no, they will destroy it.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see other dark woods, similar dark woods, be used. Pau Ferro is something that Fender uses a lot. There's another, Indian Laurel is sometimes used. So yeah, those. Now, there's an entire sub-argument that those affect tone. Oh, yeah, you can really hear the rosewood on that fretboard, or a rosewood fretboard has a darker sound, and a maple neck has a brighter sound.
Yeah, that's the
That's
common
that's
thinking.
the
And then
belief.
ebony is even brighter still because it's
Ebony
even
is
denser.
brighter still because it's harder, it's denser.
But it's darker in color.
But is it true? Do you believe that rosewood fretboards affect tone, and that you can tell the difference between a maple fretboard and a rosewood fretboard?
I tend to buy into the logic, if only because it's always been the logic.
Right, that's the thing. Is I don't know how much of this I believe because
So
it's what
no
I've
one's
been
willing
told.
to challenge the authority.
Right. I don't know how much of it is true and how much of it is just me going, well, that's how it is. And then
Yeah.
I've trained myself to believe that. I perceive a difference, but I can't really articulate a difference.
I'm gonna say something dangerous. Don't run out and do what I say right now. Do it when we're done. But have you seen the Warmoth videos where they will A/B parts? They'll like A/B different necks on the same body. So they'll have
I don't think I have.
they'll
no.
have one body and they'll have two necks. And they've made the necks out of like the same piece of wood, the same large piece of wood to like get rid of as many variables as possible. But then they'll just be like different thicknesses or a different fretboard
Wow.
on something made of the same tree.
And let me guess, the YouTube comments are all full of, I don't hear any difference at all, followed by a guy going, I hear, they're clear as day, totally different.
There actually is usually a clear difference. It's
Is
usually
there?
subtle,
Okay.
but it's like, oh, that one's got a little more sparkle and that one's a little darker. Or
Okay.
like you can hear a little more mid-range
So the
boost.
whole controversy of tone wood is not crazy. There actually is something to it, but maybe it's been overstated as well.
Yeah, I think it's garnish, right?
Okay.
Okay.
It's like the cilantro on the top of your Mexican food. Like it might taste like soap to you,
Right.
or
That's
you
a
might like
strange
it.
analogy.
And with the differences, I assume these are very nuanced, very subtle. So if you're going through any number of pedals, any number of effects of processing, are those changes going to persist? Are they going to be noticeable?
You're going to magnify them.
Are you going to magnify them? I mean,
No.
okay.
I think it's an equalizer. And
Okay.
I don't mean an actual
Actual
equalizer.
equalizer,
10 equalizer.
That will make a much bigger
Yeah,
difference.
if you're playing through high gain, you're playing through a triple rack, a Mesa Boogie triple rectifier, a big, a metal style amp where you can scoop a lot of the mid frequencies out of there. It's gonna sound. You're not gonna be able to tell. Wow, man. Nice Koa body,
Yeah.
like you're
And
just
then you
not
put
going to get that
EMGs
kind of
in it,
subtlety.
and-
Yeah, and then you put active EMGs in there, and you're losing all the subtlety of the tone. So it depends on what your setup is, and it depends on how much corks you like to sniff too.
Sure.
There is a certain
Sure.
amount of cork sniffing. People that own expensive guitars want to believe that the expensive guitars play, feel, resonate, and ultimately are better than a cheaper guitar. And sometimes you do get what you pay for, but there's an awful lot of like snake oil to you need this really rare thing. I'll tell a story, but you have a question.
But I'm just saying, so it looks like with wood particularly, we have a mix of sort of status, status purchasing. We have a mix of I forgot the word when you take medicine that doesn't.
Placebo
effect. There's a
Very
bit of
much.
placebo effect,
It's-
some
This sounds better because I spent $3,000 on it. It definitely sounds better.
and some actual some probable actual differences with the wood.
Yeah.
It can be argued that there are tonal differences between the wood. Whether they are as dramatic as people have led you to believe is questionable.
Yeah, there are other things that you can do that will make a larger difference
Okay.
than the wood.
That's
I
a
have
great
some-
segue, but I had some
Oh,
things
you had
to
some.
add.
you
Do
were-
you
you
have
were-
some questions?
I do have some questions.
Yeah,
from
let's
the
do
chat.
the questions first, and then we'll see if anything overlaps.
So I meant to ask the boys, which is you two. This is from Tufty McTavish.
Hey, Tufty.
How do you hear the natural tone of guitar? What's the best? I assume the question is, what's the best way to sort of experience the sort of purest tone of a given guitar?
I mean, if you're A-Bing it for people on YouTube,
Sure.
then you need to plug into an amp, right?
Right.
To get more sound out of it. And in that case, it being a really clean tone is going to show you. Use your eyes to listen. The difference
It's
is
YouTube.
more so than if you throw a bunch of effects on it, because then that's masking everything. I mean, you can pick up a guitar and play it acoustically, and some will just sing, whereas others are totally dead.
This is something that I firmly agree with. If I pick up an electric guitar in a store or something that I'm thinking of buying, and I strum it, and it resonates, and that's just a question of how long does the note ring out? How does it feel under your arm? How much are you dampening it and stuff like that? If it sort of projects its volume, I generally find that I like those guitars more. And that comes down to like wood density and, as you said, how dry the wood is. This is something that a lot of people don't think about, but when you use lumber for this kind of stuff, the wood needs to dry out. And sometimes cheaper guitars don't let it fully cure and fully be dry. So then once it's been finished, it's wrapped in that plastic polyurethane finish. It keeps changing, and the guitar that sounded good 3 months ago now does not sound the same because the moisture in the guitar is doing different things.
Yeah.
So I would rather go with resonance, even if it's made of a bad wood. I would rather go with something that rings out when I play it, and I go, now I want to hear that through an amp, because at its core, it already sounds good to me. That's part of it sounds good.
Also, those guitars that they don't let dry out are way heavier.
That's true.
Like,
Right.
that's something
Right.
I've noticed about a lot of cheap guitars. It's like, oh, this is made of a light wood. Ugh. But it weighs
Because
13
it's full of
pounds.
water.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
full of water. We talked about alder, ash, and mahogany as sort of like the big three. Can we talk about some of the bad woods?
Sure.
Because I've seen, first of all, we do have a problem on this earth with wood and forest conservation and stuff like that. So the guitar industry is turning towards alternative woods. Some companies are more behind this than other. Taylor is one that uses sapele a lot as a mahogany alternative. And, some people kind of turn up their nose right away. What the hell is that? I have a
That's
guitar.
probably what that guitar is.
Yeah, it
from the
might
look of
be,
it.
actually. I have a guitar made of ovenkal. I had never heard of it. It's just some weird African wood that, they were like, that could work. It has similar properties,
tree.
similar density. Yeah, it's a tree. Let's make a guitar out of it. one of the I think the most maligned woods is basswood, where a lot of people say cheap wood. I hate it. I'll never use it.
That's the sound of like 80s and 90s rock guitar, though.
That's the thing. Basswood is more affordable. It is easy to work with, but it's a little softer as a wood. So you have to be careful when you're building it. Some people don't like that. Eddie Van Halen's signature guitars, made of basswood. Steve Vai's signature guitars, made of basswood.
Everything Ibanez makes.
Yeah. Like, this is not an uncommon thing, and it's not a bad sound. But
No.
it's got a bad rep because some people who didn't make very good guitars chose basswood as their wood. So it becomes this unfair, like, no. It's also a little bit lighter than like the ash and the alder. And again, I really like alder for whatever reason, and I think it's just because I grew up idolizing Fender instruments, and alder was what I could get. And so if it says it's made of alder, I'm like, ooh. Even the weirdo purple Strat that I have down at my desk, that was apparently, even though it was made in China, it was made of alder. So I suddenly was like, oh boy, it's not made of like mystery wood, it's made of alder. I bought into that.
I might also add in that it's possible that for a lighter instruments, especially to people who don't know guitars that well, might not feel as well. I believe that the heaviness of a guitar, the sort of heft of it, it often indicates quality to
Feels
people.
good in the
For like, yeah, it feels like
Sometimes-
it feels like it's an indication of craftsmanship.
But I've also spoken to other players who are like, I can't have a heavy guitar anymore. I'm too old.
Sure.
There was a guy who had back injuries, and I was talking to him about what he could play, and he's like, yeah, I need the body to be no more than 4 pounds, which is pretty light for a Stratocaster. I mean, like, that's just the body. But for instance, just as an example, a Les Paul is probably about 9 or 10 pounds, right? Like
Depends,
on
right.
average.
Sure.
A Strat is generally more like 7 pounds, so it's
My
lighter.
Les Paul's 7 something, but
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. My old 79 Custom was like 8.5, 9.
yeah, my 68 reissue is probably like 11.
Yeah.
because it's totally unchambered.
Right.
And just
Yeah.
a tank.
And my sparkly red guitar, my favorite guitar, is 8.75 pounds, and that's alder, and it's based on a Fender design. It's ridiculously heavy for something that of that ilk, but that's just what it is. So so basswood, I think it's a bad rep, but for no good reason.
But,
I've
I
played
mean-
many good. I think the one that you're working on for me is a basswood body, the
Yeah,
blue
yeah.
Strat. Yeah.
Sir of Sir Guitars, his favorite combination is a basswood body with a maple top.
Incredible.
He thinks that's the best sounding combination.
And that's what it comes down to. And again, like when you're learning about tone or when you're about to make a $500 investment in something, you don't know what the right wood is. I will tell you that some people are building poplar is used a lot more now than I thought it was. Looking around,
mean-
Steve Morse's Ernie Ball Music Man is made out of poplar. I did not know that.
A lot of the older Mexican Fenders were poplar.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
pine.
inexpensive.
Yeah, it's inexpensive. It's plentiful, so that makes it But again, it's soft. Poplar is soft like basswood. Pine is sometimes used, especially for Telecasters, because I believe Leo Fender's original
It was
prototype
Ponderosa
was
pine.
pine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now pine is difficult because it has big knots in it, and that can affect the resonance because you've got wood that is basically disconnected from itself if you cut through a giant knot. So other people really like that. I've seen people take old tables, old kitchen tables, and cut bodies out of it to be like, that's my kitchen table.
Question from You Love Travis downstairs.
Oh, hi, We Love Travis.
You mentioned tight grain. Can you please explain what grain is and how it relates to sound?
Maybe.
Travis, we invite you.
Yeah, that's right. Come on up, Travis.
Come up
So
and discuss.
grain is basically the natural look that the wood has, right? Like wood has this variation on it, and you can the grain here on this on the Strat body is very different, but you can see that there's like waves rippling through it, and that's just the way that the body is aging over time, right?
Well,
Like
I mean,
it's
it's
just
the way
the way
that
that
the
the
tree
tree grows. Yeah, and mahogany has a very different grain, a much tighter grain.
Well, mahogany's actually got a lot of open pores.
Yeah.
So mahogany is hard to finish because you have to fill all the pores,
Ah.
or else your finish is all wavy because the finish soaks into the pores. Alder is really easy to finish because it has a really tight grain.
Okay.
So your paint doesn't soak into it; it sits more on top of it.
So do they resonate differently because of that stuff, or when you fill it with finish or whatever you're filling it with, does it?
If you fill it with something hard,
like epoxy?
Yeah.
Or like what do you?
Then what does that do to it? That's a fair question.
You've built guitars from body blanks, right? Like
Mhm.
you've started from nothing.
Oh, I mean, I've started from raw
what is a
lumber.
body blank?
Yeah.
A body blank. Picture this as a square. Picture like.
Oh, I
It's-
mean, I just go and get giant pieces of lumber and chop them up and create the body blanks.
A body blank is basically it's the roughed out square or rectangular piece of wood that will become whatever body shape you trace onto it and then cut. So like when you're building a guitar from scratch, that's what you start with. I don't, I like, do you have one that's already in the shape that I like? Great, I'll buy that one. But yeah, that's what a body blank is. So, I mean, you're going to a lot of trouble. But then again, you can go around and you want to talk about tapping? Like the tap test
Yeah,
to
the
find
tap
out
test.
when you've got that body blank, which is the right piece of wood.
Yeah, because they all resonate differently.
Right.
So if you're looking for a specific resonance, you can go and tap on all of them. And
So what are you listening or feeling for?
I mean,
when you're
really, the
tapping?
big difference is some things just sound dead.
Okay.
You go tap and it goes.
And there's no echo. There's no sense that the vibration has gone anywhere.
Yeah, but sometimes you'll
absorbed.
tap on something and it just kind of rings like a bell.
And that's probably
You
what
would
you would
think
wanna
that
look
would be
for.
preferable.
Right.
you would think.
You would think. But that goes back to our whole concept of it. Is the wood resonant?
And what about non-standard materials? Like if you have an aluminum guitar, or Iowa Squared asks like carbon fiber
Yeah.
guitars.
I'm a big fan of
Carbon
the
fiber
thing.
supposedly sounds like spruce.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, that's what they say in like the violin and acoustic instrument world. Is it
Okay.
sounds
It's like
pretty much like
spruce.
spruce, which is what the top would have been made of anyway.
I'm a big fan of weird guitars. I've tried aluminum necks. I have never tried an aluminum body that I know of. The aluminum neck was a Kramer bass, and it was heavy as the day is long, man. Oh my god! But I loved it because it was so weird. So yeah, that's part of the. All right, we're going to run out of wood, or we're going to run out of the wood that everybody loves. What if we just make a left turn? What does a guitar sound like out of carbon fiber? I know acoustics. There's Rainsong is one of the bigger places that makes acoustics out of carbon fiber. I'm all down for that, but they all resonate differently. So we're all just sort of learning. What if you use sponges? I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the viral videos of the dude with the epoxy
we've shared
and no
a bunch of
control.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just like, I took 6,000 colored pencils and made myself a guitar, or I took a piece of salvaged lumber and I filled it all in with epoxy. And again, what's the resonant property of epoxy? You're talking about a plastic guitar, and yet he plugs in and it sounds like a guitar. So,
So why is that then?
Because well, it could be said that it's all about the pickups.
Yeah.
I didn't even get to dunk on agathis as my least favorite wood, but we'll let that go.
Yeah,
Or
most
Paulonia. Ugh. There are some woods that, if they look too cheap, maybe you should avoid. And I would say agathis and Paulonia are the two words that are like super soft to the
you
point
just don't
where
know them, Dan. They're new to you. and
no,
you're
it's not
scared.
that. It's not that. Well, it's a little bit that, but yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't know. They're suspiciously cheap and they're very soft. So like you knock into them, they're gonna instantly ding. If you make a mistake while you're building one or modifying one, you may have to fill it. And what are you going to fill it with? Paulonia? No. So anyway, I'm sorry. So
You should just get an oak guitar, Dan.
yeah. Oh, that would be
Ooh,
great. Are you an
yeah.
oak man, Jimmy? I will be glad to go back to wood
Sure.
if it shows up. But it seems like a good time to go into if you can build an epoxy guitar or
And
build
have it sound
something
like a guitar.
yeah, out of like junk that you find around your house and or on sale at the Crayola store. What is it? What is actually causing it? And I would argue that the single most important element is not the wood, but it is the pickups.
It's the disturbance in the electronic field
Right.
that you're causing.
So real
Ooh.
quick, pickups work because there's magnets in the pickups, and then
And a
you
coil of wire.
coil a wire around those magnets inside, and then you flick the string, and the string sends out vibrations, and the magnets that it goes over read that, and that's what creates the sound. That is
Yeah,
that is the simplest way to explain what a pickup is.
I don't know how deep we want to get into it, because maybe we'll get into it deeper another time.
He builds his own pickups in
Yeah.
addition. So he actually will do the guy winding the wire around the magnets. Pody has made his own pickups, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah, it's just something I do. I also mow the lawn. Whatever.
I actually
Don't
we're,
need
we're getting way off topic, but I got a tiller and I tore out the whole front lawn because I was so tired of mowing the lawn, and now it's river rock and gravel and succulents. It's very nice.
It's very nice.
Yes.
I've seen it. It's good.
Yeah, it's coming along. It's a lot of work. Anyway, the magnets make a magnetic field, and the pickup or the string vibrating disturbs that magnetic field, and that actually creates AC. It creates electrical current, and that electrical current is what you then send to your amplifier.
So that's what you hear.
Yeah,
Then is the
you're
electrical
hearing electricity.
Yeah.
Wild.
Ah.
Science is cool.
What about Paizo pickups?
Oh.
Travis, we need you.
That was the Paizo question was asked
Paizo
from
are sort of
Pedrobot 2000.
Paizo are contact pickups that are usually used to simulate or create an acoustic style sound rather than an electric sound. It is an electric pickup, but it generally it's basically a series of crystals that lives most commonly under the bridge on an acoustic guitar or an acoustic style guitar.
That sounds like a D&D game that I ran once.
Yeah.
Bunch of crystals living under a bridge. And
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Sorry.
and then you have to. Okay, yeah, they're plus
No, sorry.
3. Yeah. But that's not really a common electric pickup. That's much more in a hybrid guitar, or I mean, they do make electrics that have both magnetic and piezo. I always said piezo. I always assumed it was very Italian. The piezo pickups.
I like it.
So I know all this stuff to read it, but I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to say Basswood. I don't know how to, like NASCAR, they have paint. I don't know if it's livery or livery. I keep calling it livery, and everybody tells me it's livery. Yeah, so I'll just, never mind. So, though it's rare to find your first guitar having something with piezo pickups in it. Piezo?
Sure.
I've always said piezo, but maybe it's piezo. I don't know.
We're going to debate that for the next.
Yeah,
30
let's just
minutes.
do that. Could somebody look it up? I'm sure somebody's got a pronunciation guide. So, briefly, there are many different styles of pickups, but really only 2.
Sure.
I say there's many, but the only 2 you care about, certainly from the modern rock and jazz context, it's generally 2 kinds of pickups. There's single coil pickups, which is what's in this Fender Stratocaster that Pody has. Thanks. That's our close-up cam now. These are the ones that are like ovals with 6 dots in them. Usually they have 6 dots in them. There are ones that don't.
What if it's an 8-string?
If it's an 8-string, it would have 8 dots in it.
What if it's a blade pickup?
If it's a blade pickup, then it's a different thing altogether. Don't start. Let's just get through the basics before we tell them all the variations. So yeah, that's the magnet over which the string is situated, so that when you move it, it disturbs the waves, and it's that magnet that's putting out those magnet. It's the magnetic field that is being disturbed. So for years, this was the only kind of pickup. These are very bright. These are notoriously bright. They also used to, much more than current, suffer from what we call 60-cycle hum, which is you would plug them in, and if there were other electrical things in the field that were working at around 60 hertz, like lights, or maybe just ungrounded, that's what it's like. And the whole time, sometimes we've had the P90 telly that was on last week's stream, and everybody's like, what's that buzzing going on like crazy? And it was Andrew's guitar, just because those pickups, these P90 pickups, which is another style of single coil pickup, these were the pickups that Gibson used before they had humbuckers. And we'll talk about humbuckers in a second, but these are the kind of pickups that generally Billy Joe Armstrong prefers. He has a lot of Les Paul Juniors. Very bright, very sort of gutsy, a little woolly sound, a sort of untamed sound, right?
Less bright than a Fender single coil. I don't know how deep we want to get into that. Probably not that deep.
No, less bright is fine. A little bit warmer.
Yeah, like not as tall.
Yeah.
And wider.
Yeah, as the magnets inside, the whole sort of assembly is a larger thing, but it also is a lot more prone to noise, just because of the way that it's constructed. So as people started saying, how do we get rid of that? How do we lose that hum? How do we buck the hum, if you will? There are several different designs of humbucker guitars. Oh, thank you. I can hear the pinch. So the idea is you take 2 single coils and you wrap them together, and by doing so, you darken the sound because the sort of the hum cancels itself out, right?
Yeah. So,
and that's how they're called humbuckers.
You have 2 coils. The start of one is connected to the end of the other one. and then the magnet runs down the center. So one side is north and one side is south, and the coils are out of phase with one another. So that cancels out the majority of the hum.
So you get a more pure signal out of it. You don't have to worry about a lot of interference.
I mean, you get a less pure signal because you're cutting all these frequencies.
Oh, okay.
And you get a mid-hump.
Okay, so you get a more focused, like a notch within the frequency spectrum. You're narrowing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just kind of creating a mid-hump.
Okay.
As a side effect of the phase cancellation.
Okay.
Because it's more.
But these are darker generally compared to single coils.
Yeah, they're darker, but I would argue they also have a lot more mids.
They do. But my problem with humbuckers is they can be very boomy. Like that low end, it can get very like overwhelmingly bassy, which is just not a sound that I like, which is where my favorite pickups come in, which are the mini humbuckers. Now, this was a weird hybrid thing that Epiphone actually did invent the mini humbucker. And they used these on jazz guitars primarily in the 40s and 50s. And then when Gibson bought Epiphone, they had all these mini humbuckers around, so they started putting them in all the Gibson guitars.
And everything.
But to me, the mini humbucker, which is built the same way humbuckers are built, it's just smaller
Largely.
bobbins.
It's slightly different.
Is it? How is it different?
So these are pole pieces, right? Like you have here. But on the other coil, instead of those being individual slugs, it's just one big slug in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's going to change the inductance of the pickup.
All right. Well,
and it changes the shape of the magnetic field slightly.
So, but it's smaller and tighter? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Yeah. So I like the single coil sound, but I like some of the grunt that you can get out of humbuckers. So that's why I'm like all like, it's a running joke that I've kind of helped perpetuate how much I love mini humbuckers. But again, but some people just don't like them. They don't sound enough like a single coil or like a humbucker. Those are the two standards that people have sort of calibrated their ears to. So I was always looking for something different. And then I got some really high quality Seymour Duncan mini humbuckers in a guitar. And I went, oh my God, this is that mix between the clarity of a single coil and the sort of mid grunt that I like of a humbucker. This is all I want to play for the rest of my life. So now there are other kinds of pickups, like Rickenbacker has its own design. The gold foils that Dan Auerbach uses from like vintage guitars of the 60s, they're generally not really high quality. They were basically really cheap pickups, but they have their charms because, wow, this sounds crappy. Oh, but I can use that artistically.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say you're going to run into single coils and humbuckers most of the time.
Yeah.
Occasionally you're going to run into P90s, and even less occasionally you're going to run into mini hums.
Yeah, and then
but
the
I
Jaguar
recommend mini hums.
And the Jazz Masters, those both have their own
their
different
own single coils, right?
Yeah.
Jazz Masters and Jaguars, and the Jazz Masters are those big. It's funny, they're not called soap bars, but they look almost the size of a bar of soap.
Yeah, they're even
they're larger
wider
than a
P90.
P90. But yeah, and that's unique to the Jazz Master because Leo Fender was constantly trying new designs and stuff.
Question for Pody. Now, this is something that I heard might or might not be true fairly recently.
I didn't do it.
Fairly recently. The magnets, the magnetic fields created by the pickups, do those pull on your string?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have more pickups, it's possible that your guitar will ring out less than if you had fewer pickups?
Like 3 pickups versus a 1 pickup. Eddie Van Halen has 1 at the bridge, but Peter Frampton had 3, right?
Will that noticeably affect your sustain? Possibly.
Noticeably?
Yeah.
What do you? I mean.
I mean, I guess
how,
that's.
how sensitive
Are we back into Subjective City?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean.
I love Subjective City.
Wham bam, thank you,
great,
Doug.
great place to live.
Phil X is somebody, and also Sam from Dragon Force. They both take the neck pickup out.
Right.
So they're like,
right.
all I need is a bridge pickup, and I don't want anything else interfering with my sound. And also, the neck pickup is closer to the center of the string, so it's going to pull on the string more than the bridge pickup because it's
the string
so
is a
far
little
back.
bit looser there. The tension is
That's
less
right.
here than it is here.
So in theory.
Yeah.
And we should try this sometime. If you got something with like a giant honking ceramic magnet, it could pull the string enough to dampen its sustain a bit.
So if you could measure if you pick a point to sort of how small the sound wave can be, you could potentially measure how long a given note might sustain with and without that pickup.
Yeah. We'll have to build some sort of machine to constantly pluck the string
Sure.
at the same
Yeah.
velocity.
I think
A
they have
drinking bird with a pick in its mouth.
Oh,
That
yeah.
would be perfect. You used a word, and you said a big honkin' ceramic magnet. And we should probably briefly, without going too far in, because when you say, oh, okay, well, single or humbucker, and let's say you decide on humbucker, the magnets, the type of magnets used that are wrapped inside the wire can vary differently as well. Very popular are the Alnico, so it's aluminum, nickel, and cobalt. That's what it stands for. There's Alnico, but there's 5 different versions of Alnico magnets, or more. The common ones are Alnico 5, which are very sort
That's
of
the most
warm,
common,
classic
yeah.
rock, standard sort of Gibson Les Paul. Those were Alnico 5s, right? Or
Nope.
were they Alnico 2s?
Nope.
Those are Alnico 3s?
Nope.
All right, I've only got one less. Well, were they ceramic?
Nope.
They were 4s.
Usually.
Damn it. I really had to
Back
wait
in the
till
day, Gibson put whatever they got.
That
in the
is
pickups.
true.
They did
A
not care.
lot of people believe that like this mojo of tone is like, well, you've got to do it the way they did in 1957. And they've done multiple interviews with people who worked in the factories back then, and they were like, it was just a job, guys. Like,
Yeah.
we used
We
whatever
got
was on
magnets.
hand. It's not like they're like, now, constructed exactly this way. It's like sometimes they made mistakes, and those mistakes sounded good. Sometimes
Yeah.
they didn't make mistakes, and those sounded good too.
Yeah, the machine had a manual start and stop.
Yeah.
So if somebody went and got coffee, you were going to get a hot pickup.
Right. Yeah. But loosely, Alnico 5's sort of warm, basic, friendly rock sound that is agreeable to a lot of people. Alnico 2, a little bit brighter.
I would say warmer, less high end.
Really?
Oh, yeah,
Less
Alnico
high end.
2.
I thought the 2's.
Yeah.
But then ceramics, which is a completely different kind of magnet, those are much brighter.
Yes.
And I
It's,
have...
it's all a recipe. Like, it depends on everything else.
That's true. That's true. I mean, again, like the number of winds of wire around those magnets will affect it dramatically. So what you've got is people saying ours sound like the vintage ones because we counted the winding of the thing, and we've got the same magnets, or at least as close as we can get. There's a lot. I would say there's a fair amount of snake oil, and most people can't tell the difference between 2 different Alnico 5 magnets unless one was overwound, which you will see. So hot or overwound means you're going to get a more aggressive sound. It's better for heavy rock,
Yeah.
generally.
I mean, you're going to get more output, basically. I would say the thing that makes the biggest difference in a pickup is the magnet.
Okay.
Really?
If you feel comfortable swapping out magnets, you can buy magnets for like $3, and if you just swap the magnet out in a pickup, that will dramatically change the
I
sound.
would love, I've got some pickups at home that are not currently in a project guitar that I would love to try that with. Because at this point, I'm just like, they're sitting in my closet. They're not doing nothing.
Yeah, and
Make
it's
sure you
a-
record
it's
them
a cheap
before and after.
investment.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, like, I should hold on to them and we should do something for the show or do some special thing with that. Because that fascinates me, and I would, I don't have, I mean, you can remove them and not change the wire. You just pop new ones
Yeah, yeah.
in. Like a cartridge, like a Nintendo?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, you just like on a humbucker, you just loosen the bobbins from the back and just slide the old one out, slide a new one
That's
in.
crazy.
Just make sure you
You're a wizard, Harry.
just mark
so
which side is north.
yeah, I was actually, before we came up here, I'm looking for some replacement pickups, and I wanted sort of the vintage hollow body jangle, like you
Yeah,
might find in
yeah.
a Gretsch or a Rickenbacker. And I found, my friends over at Guitar Fetish, which is a place that you can get cheap parts that are pretty good for the price. They're, like between that and like $125 a pickup versus their $30 for a pickup, you're probably going to be able to tell the difference. Some people say you can't. Again, it's all subjective. But they have 3 different types of pickups that all purport to give you that vintage jangly sound. And I'm looking at them going, I don't know which one to buy, and I don't want to make a mistake. So I think I figured out what I want to do in that case. But even there was like, well, this one's made with ceramics, this one's made with Alnico 5s, and this one's made with Alnico 2s. And even though you would think that the Alnico 5, based on its name, was the one that I was looking for, when I looked at the actual output of the pickup and how much vintage output it has versus, whether it's got a louder pickup naturally or whether it's a quieter pickup naturally, it looks like the quietest pickup is actually going to make me the happiest for what I want to do with it.
That
But
makes sense.
that was news. So you're constantly going to be finding little points of subjectivity. Every time you go down another layer in guitar, you're going to find something else that is like, well, there's no objective truth. There is no one way to do it. What sounds good to another person is going to sound different to you. That person making a YouTube video does not have your amplifier, does not have you know, anything that you have at home is not using effects at all, you know, it's impossible to do this.
The
Speaking
more
of other layers,
carbon you have in your pole pieces, the brighter your pickup.
Really?
Yeah.
God, Pody knows everything.
Speaking of other layers,
Yeah.
so you've got the wood
Yeah.
that's holding and stretching the strings. The strings are going into the pickups,
Mhm.
and then the pickups send the signal where?
Out
Pots.
Out, pots.
to the pots.
Well,
Okay.
Can we skip the pots?
They make a huge difference.
Okay, well, let's talk about...
Real quick, the potentiometers are your volume and tone knobs. That's what they're called, pots for short. And they have their own ratings. Like different ones let different amounts of frequencies go through, right?
Right. So they're variable resistors. And as soon as you put a resistor into a circuit, you create a filter. So the higher the resistance,
I was going to say, just keep going because I can't describe this.
the higher the resistance of your pot, typical are
250 and 5.
and 500, the more high end they let through.
Okay, so 250s let less high end through, and 500s are brighter.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times 500K pots are used on humbuckers because they are naturally a darker pickup, so you're trying to balance that out. And then on a Stratocaster with single coils, they're generally 250K pots.
So you
that
don't
they
end up
let
with an
more
ice pick.
Now, the P90s, 300K pots.
That's kind of Gibson for you.
It's kind of Gibson. They just sort of did their own thing. There's no, in fact, my Lammy guitar, we put P90s in it, and you talked me into buying 300K pots, and I still haven't installed them. So yeah, but once you get out through that, when you get out the output jack, you go into an amplifier. And of course, this makes
that can't possibly have any effect on your
no,
tone.
not generally. They're all the same. I mean, everybody plugs into like line 6, right? And so it's just
Right. You're just hearing the line 6.
yeah. Yeah, so amplifiers is a whole nother thing. You've built amplifiers too, right?
Yep.
You've literally built everything we're talking about today, which is insane.
Pedals too.
And I would argue that in the same way that there are certain understood truisms, you know, that aren't really true, of what does alder sound like, what does mahogany sound like, what do humbuckers and single coils sound like. There's generally, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 schools of thought about amp tone.
Sure.
The construction of the amp counts a lot. You have tube amps, which is the way that they used to make them in vintage days, and then you have solid state amps.
Wait, you have tube amps, period.
Okay, yeah. Pody doesn't believe in solid state amps, but Dimebag Darrell did, and he
that's
did
true.
just fine.
My bad.
Solid states don't have tubes. Tubes are fragile. Tubes heat up. But when you overdrive that amplifier, when you put more signal into it, more power than it's really supposed to have, that's where you get that beautiful distortion, rock crunch sound that we all talk about that sort of defines rock as a genre. So that came out of running a tube amplifier hotter than you should, or in Eddie Van Halen's case, reducing the voltage on his Marshall head so that he didn't have to turn it up as high in volume to get the saturation of that distortion.
He could
that
turn
wanted.
it up really high, and then he could bring his overall volume
Right.
down to a more reasonable level. But it also makes the tubes run harder because you're reducing the voltage going to them.
Right. So you're sort of running the amp in a way that it wasn't really originally designed to run. Even though they're designing them to run that way,
Right.
you're sort of abusing the tubes, and so tubes do wear out. They're expensive. They're fragile. They are glass. Meanwhile, here comes the 70s, and we go, solid state. That's the best thing in the world. We got rid of the tubes. We can make it sound great. And everybody goes, ew, it sounds thin, or it sounds terrible.
Sterile.
Yeah, the Roland JC120, probably one of the most legendary solid state
Doesn't
amps.
that have metal cone speakers?
I'm not sure if it does, but the JC120, like your disdain is delicious up here. I gotta say.
When I was in school, the jazz program had one of those.
Of course they do, because
and I just
it's the ultimate school amp.
I remember showing up to jazz improv class with this guitar and just having the teacher be like,
No way, man.
and I just wanted to put the pointy headstock through the metal.
So yeah, it's brighter. It supposedly doesn't have that warmth. Most practice amps that you get in those little like $99 get a guitar and an amp and everything you need. Don't do that. Merry holidays, everybody, but don't ask for one of those. But they make a sound, and that's good enough when you're learning. But it
I had
was
a PV Rage.
my first amp was a hybrid where the preamp, which is before it goes into the power stage, you have this, to take this unamplified, there's no amplification in a guitar. You're just sending a line signal out. So that has to be boosted, and then it gets boosted. What? Sorry.
Instrument
What did
level.
I say?
Line.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The instrument level. And then, so you go into a preamp stage, and that's generally what you overdrive, right?
Yeah,
like that's where
really
a lot
what
of the
has most
tonal
of the
character
tone.
comes from, because there's a couple of tubes in that part of the amp, and you're like, okay, run that hot. Let me give you more than you should handle.
The
And then
phase
by
inverter,
when it put,
though,
Hmm?
the phase inverter,
yeah,
a lot of your sound comes from that too.
okay, how?
What and what is that?
Yeah,
So-
I was just gonna say, and then it goes on to the power stage, which is what actually pushes the cone.
So your preamp sound runs into the phase inverter, and the phase inverter flips half of it out of phase. And then
Why?
to get rid of some of the noise,
Okay.
because otherwise it would be super noisy. And then that runs into your power amp. So your power amp is basically split into two sections, and one is taking each side
Okay.
of the
And
phase.
so when it sums it, then it sounds good.
Yeah, well, one half of that is pushing the speaker out, the other half of it's pulling the speaker in.
Okay.
Right.
Squirrely
Otherwise,
Ninja.
you'd have a DC amp
Right.
instead of an AC amp.
Instead of an AC amp.
Squirrely Ninja wants to know: can we talk about the effects of tone wood used to build amps? No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Mesa Boogie builds some beautiful amplifiers.
Yeah. But honestly, when you get to tone wood and amp cabinets, it's basically visual, right?
Yeah, I
Like
think so. I mean, the construction of the cabinet will change its sound, if it has ports in it or anything like that.
Right. But a
Which-
mahogany cabinet versus a maple cabinet versus a plywood cabinet.
It's mostly how heavy do you want it to be?
Yeah, it's not as tone wood doesn't really factor into what's holding the speaker cones in place. All the other elements are far more important. But I've seen some gorgeous like curly maple cabinets and stuff, and I go,
Yeah.
ooh, that's great.
Ooh,
and yeah,
that's expensive.
pretty.
ooh, that's
yeah.
expensive. It's pretty, but that's what it's for. So once we've gotten you out through the phase inverter and into the power stage, and you're making a sound, what sound are you making? There are three main amplifier voices that I would argue there are three main ones. There's Fender, which was one of the first amps out there, commercial amps out there. There's Vox, and there's Marshall. Now, Fender started, they're known for being very clean amps. This is one of my favorite nonsense tone mojo phrases. Fender amps take pedals well. That is to say that they're clean. You can overdrive them, but they stay clean at louder volumes, generally a lot more than other amps do. And so if you put pedals in before the preamp, you're going to be able to affect the tone more through the effects pedals that you're using than simply overdriving the amp.
Yeah,
And that makes them very versatile, and they're very popular in studios. There's a lot of country players really like that clean spank that you get, and you can adjust that. But so Fenders is sort of like, you want a pristine clean. That's kind of what Fenders are known for. Now, classic records have been made by taking a very small, like a 5-watt Princeton amp. You turn it all the way up. You put it in a closet in a recording studio, put a microphone in that room, and you get this glorious
Layla.
oversaturated tube tone. This is Eric Clapton. This is like some of the greatest. Crossroads is a really good example of that. So then Jim Marshall, this guy in England, was coming. People would like folks like Pete Townsend and the classic rock guys, Jimi Hendrix. They're like, I need more volume. I'm playing really loud music, and it's not loud enough. And I'm playing stadiums now, and I'm playing Woodstock, and I need bigger amps. So he took a Fender Bassman, which is a 4x10, four speakers, 10 inches each, which was really designed by Fender for their basses, and he hot rods that, and that becomes the template for the modern Marshall. That's this 1959. This is in 1959, isn't it? Like, that's the model, not the year.
That's the name of the circuit in it. Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So Marshall becomes its own tone because he's monkeyed with that so much. But it is based on a Fender Bassman.
Yeah, you can see the resemblance
Yeah.
looking at the circuit.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet. But now Marshall is known as sort of like a much gruffer, a much beefier, ballsier, bassier tone.
It's got more gain.
It's got more gain, so it can
And-
go louder. It can distort easier, but it's also a warmer sound than that sort of almost ice-picky Fender sound.
Yeah. So the other thing that Jim Marshall did was build a giant 8x12 cabinet.
He did. We've
And-
all seen Marshall stacks.
And the more speakers you have, the way the waveforms interact with all those speakers is you get more low end. The more speakers you have, you get this artificial boost in low end.
So 2 4x12 cabinets stacked on top of themselves are generally going to be a bassier, boomier bigger sound than a 4x12. So the as legend has it, he actually did make 8x12 cabinets and 8x10 cabinets for Pete Townsend, and they found out that they were too damn heavy to move from gig to gig. So he said, you got to come up with something. He goes, what if I split it in half and you can stack one on top of the other? And that's why we have the Marshall stack.
Yep. Brian,
so, yes.
Sorry.
Go right
you
ahead.
have a meeting in just a few minutes. Is that correct?
Canceled.
It got canceled?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Continue on.
Okay, so the third major amp, and I don't know the real origins of this, but this is my favorite amp, so it must. I'm saving the best for last because it's the ultimate evolution of amplifiers. Is the Vox Sound, and the Vox is somewhere, again, like a mini humbucker, somewhere between a Fender Clean and a Marshall Grunt. It's not as bassy as a Marshall, but it can overdrive and get a little bit warmer than a Fender.
That top boost.
It's got that top boost. So the Vox AC15 and the AC30 is sort of like their legendary amp. A 2x12 cabinet, two 12-inch speakers, so large and loud and heavy. An AC30 is about 60 to 80 pounds, so it's not something you want to carry around to gigs unless you have a roadie. But the AC30 had two channels in it. One was a normal channel, and one was a top boost, and that was a treble boost. Like it accentuates the higher frequencies. And if you turn the top boost gain all the way up on that channel, and then you turn up your regular volume, Brian May. Like, it's the Queen sound. The Beatles used it a lot. The Beatles used it more on the clean side of things, but with a little bit of dirt here and there. Brian May made it famous. U2 from The Edge, also a big AC30. So between those three, you cover a lot of ground. Now, you get into modern stuff like Soldanos and Mesa Boogies and stuff like that. That's a refinement of Marshall, right? That's a further, what can we do to extend what Marshall was working on?
Yeah,
what's the next evolution?
I mean, Soldano and Diesel and so many of the like high gain amps are hot rodded JCM 800s.
Right.
Like the JCM 800 is really like the hard rock and metal sound.
It is a fantastic amp. We have one here, and every once in a while when nobody's around, we get to plug it in and turn it on, and it blows your face off.
I think the Boogies are like just a Fender that's been horribly mutated.
Yes, the Mesa Boogies, certainly their old combo amps, started out as modified Fender Princetons or something. It's a hot rodded Princeton.
Yeah,
confirmed by David Stevens.
They like have their tone stack in a funny place too because of that, like versus a Marshall.
Oh,
what do you mean by tone stack?
The tone controls.
Okay.
Where in that signal between the phase inverter and the preamp and the power amp, where do you introduce letting the player sculpt what the tone should sound like? That makes a big difference in the sound of it. So there's no right answer to amp tone either. But as you can see, this can have yet another major effect. You might wind up with something very bassy on a Marshall side. I owned a Marshall hybrid because, again, I didn't own a full tube amp until about 5 years ago. And I got one of the little Vox lunchbox amps. It's like literally has a handle. It's an AC4. It's made in China. This is not an expensive amp. I plugged in and I didn't think it was me. Like, it sounded so good. I did not believe the hype of tube amps sound amazing and solid-state amps sound like crap. I always had some hybrid that had like a preamp, tube, and a power stage. Well, if you're just trying to make a louder noise, let's use solid-state. It's cheaper, it's easier, it's more reliable. And I had a Marshall AVT50, a very good hybrid amp, but it had that Marshall. Well, okay. You hate solid state. You believe. I've said, what pedal do you use? What do you use for distortion pedals? You said, I don't. I just turn it all the way up. I found out you're in good company. Dave Grohl does the same thing. He doesn't use pedals.
Okay.
His distortion tone is you take a Marshall amp, you turn it all the damn way up, and you get out of its way.
Yeah, the amp that I built.
And that does sound beautiful.
It's like a 1 watt JCM 800 basically.
Right.
And it's sitting on my desk at home, and every knob is just turned all the way up.
I believe this. I really believe this. So, yeah, there's lots of different things you can do, but if you're looking for a clean sound or you want to use a lot of pedals, go Fender. If you're looking for that classic British or a crunch but not full-on high-gain angry sound, you might want like a Vox. And then if you want that classic sound of 70s and 80s hard rock and metal, then it's generally Marshall. No right answer and lots of variations. People say, I took the best parts of this and added it to this. And so you'll find a lot of boutique makers. Or I made a better version, Matchless for years. The DC30 is their version of the AC30. Highly prized because they're no longer in. But, I've read a ton of studio interviews where guys are like, yeah, I just show up with my Matchless and that's all I need. So it's another way to get tone.
It is now 4 o'clock here on the Pacific time zone. There's one more topic I think we wanted to talk about, but I do want to do a quick fire
Sure.
of questions. So, do you want to touch on the last topic, or should we save that one for later?
Let's do the questions, I think.
Yeah, let's do the
Questions? Okay, so we'll talk about, perhaps we'll revisit this topic in a future time and continue on the discussion about what makes tone. But for now, let's get to some of these last questions. Mad Owl asks, my amp has a function to run a preamp valve hot or cold. What the heck does that do?
Oh, is that the bias?
I don't know that it's the bias, which is sort of, well, I don't know. I mean, I've never heard bias in terms of hot and cold.
You can bias a tube hot or you can bias a tube cold. Generally, if you bias it hot, it will blow up faster, but it's a little gainier.
Okay.
Okay.
So you get more of that character that you want,
Yeah.
but you are risking the gear a little bit.
Yeah, it won't last.
So this
as
is
long.
like overclocking your CPU,
Yeah.
but knowing that you're taking a risk. Okay. So
the
there-
analog.
You Love Travis asks, what are the differences, if any, between active and passive pickups?
Travis, you know well there's no difference.
we were going to talk about this. Active pickups have a 9-volt battery as part of its circuit that amplifies the signal a little bit before it leaves the guitar.
Yeah,
That
there's
is
typically a preamp built into the pickup.
right. So the EMGs, the sound of Metallica, a lot of sound of heavy metal, at least modern heavy metal from 80s, 90s, and beyond. And my little purple guitar has EMGs in it too. So Pink Floyd,
Pink Floyd.
yeah, David Gilmour has it. It's a different sound. It's not a better sound. There's no reason to get it unless you hear it and go, "Wow, that's the sound I want." Don't buy it just because your heroes from Metallica or Pink Floyd do it. They're expensive and they require additional
And
maintenance.
EMGs have been around since the 70s.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
La Wonka asks, true or false, pick size matters more than guitar materials?
False.
True.
You
You should just play jazz picks.
Pody likes the smaller jazz picks.
I
Here's-
have one that I made out of a Rocksmith. pick.
Yeah, you did. We keep making the standard size picks, and Pody keeps saying, "Yeah, you did it wrong. They're too big." So he has a
Yeah.
punch, a pick cutter that lets him crunch it down. I would say that smaller picks are better for precision playing. Excuse me, and the what the pick is made out of does change the tone somewhat. It certainly changes my comfort level.
It
You mentioned
definitely
Brian May earlier.
Yeah,
who's
plays
sort
with
of
a
notorious-
sixpence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plays with hard metal.
Yeah, the material of the pick definitely changes the sound of the attack.
Yes.
So I don't know that
Whether
the
that goes
sustain
into
of
your-
your note will change much, but the attack, you can hear a difference. Shu is constantly getting new picks and being like, oh, this one sounds
Yeah.
different.
The John Newton asks, do old guitars sound better than new guitars?
I knew John would come in with some trolling question. There is an argument, certainly in the world of acoustic guitars, but also within electric, that as the wood ages and that moisture gets even further and further out, that some people believe that old wood sounds better.
I've got my 62 Gibson, and
Yeah, you've got a melody maker. Does it sound good?
yeah.
Does it sound better than the stuff that you've built?
It has this certain like resonance to it, and I think that
So yes,
You
old
know,
wood sounds better.
it's old growth wood, and the wood has just had time to mature.
The wood has also gotten used to being a guitar. Like the resonance, I always think that like to a certain extent, it's like when you're in the shape of a guitar, after a while and you're asked to resonate in a certain way, that sort of just gets sweeter.
Right, yeah, there's an argument that like over time it changes like the
Like it-
the structure.
Like the actual
The
waves
cellular
will
structure.
Mhm.
shift the...
Well, just that the wood
Interesting.
changes a little bit over time.
The John Newton also asks,
Yeah.
and this is sort
Go
of
to
a,
work,
this
John.
might be a little bit of a hint as to what could be coming with this discussion later on. What matters most to the tone, equipment or the player?
This was our final point, which was that technique is often a bigger element of tone. It's easy to get lost in the gear sea, right? You just like drown. Oh no, I need different pickups. Oh no, my wood is wrong. Or oh geez, I bought the wrong amp. It comes down to how you play. If you can hear your favorite player, you won't necessarily know what your favorite player is playing through or on, but you will recognize their style.
Yeah.
And this is a challenge for every guitarist to find your sound. Part of your sound is how you are pressing your fingers on the strings.
Yeah.
I
There's,
mean,
there's something to be said about like consistency in playing and the way you interact with the instrument. That
yeah.
makes a
When I
huge
hear
difference.
Shu just noodling around in the office, he sounds different than Andrew, even though they're both jazz players. They're both highly accomplished jazz players. But they sound different. I can tell you who it is that's playing just because there's little little idiosyncrasies, the way that you attack a note, the way you slide a note or switch between chords or whatever. Eddie Van Halen, one of my favorite guitarists, once said, it doesn't matter. Like, I sound the same whether I'm playing through a Strat or a Les Paul. He has, like 150, 200 guitars at his home. He's like, they all sound like me. It's in the fingers. Tone is in the fingers. And you'll hear a lot of people say that. Clapton likes to play without a pick and with his fingers because he feels that changes the tone. Mark Knopfler, famous fingerstyle only player for the same thing.
Jeff Beck.
So, yeah, Jeff Beck. So, absolutely, your tone and the way that, so what it comes down to is practice before you buy gear. Because whatever you're doing that's unique to you is going to matter more about how those notes are shaped, whether you're putting them through single coils or whether you're putting them through alder or mahogany or a Vox or a Fender, but do the Vox. It really is about how you play on a human, ergonomic level. There's nothing you can do other than practice and learn about yourself and find out what your tendencies are and what you want to do and try to improve your skills to figure out how that's going to affect your tone. But yeah, you are the biggest tone factor of all. That is true.
Okay.
Do we agree on that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That would be a great place to stop, but I've got one more question.
That's fine. See, I was trying to land that plane for you,
Oh,
Doug.
yeah. Well, you keep doing that today. Dicelinger wants to know, are better pickups going to be noticeable if I'm not plugging into an amp, as in only playing through Rocksmith?
That's a good question.
I mean, we've never A-B'd it here. I would say, I've done it through other software, and the difference is huge.
Yeah.
Between pickups.
What about our software? Is our software good?
Our software
That's what
is
he's
good.
basically asking. Is our software good?
But is our software sort of handling the tone more than...
I mean, our software definitely
software
handles your volume
Right.
much more so than
Yeah.
anything else will.
Right.
So
That's the whole calibration thing, too.
yeah, so that
We're looking-
definitely makes a difference.
So Rocksmith sort of wants to have its input be as neutral as possible.
Yeah, we're trying
Yeah.
to even it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we're trying. You will notice. You will probably notice less tonal variation, unless you'll notice a volume boost for active versus passive pickups for sure, as we've found out sometimes the hard way on the stream. But yeah, I think less so in Rocksmith than you will through analog amps. Although modern digital recreations, like the Axe FX stuff and the Kemper profiling amps, and even the current generation of Line 6 stuff, the digital technology has come a long way to copying authentic sounding or realistic sounding or reactive tones. A lot of times you'll hear it's the way that the amp interacts with the player, and I don't get that from digital recreations.
The sag from the rectifier.
The sag from the rectifier. That's one of the. There's a lot of cork sniffing terms out there, but modern digital stuff has that you would have to pay a lot more than you paid for Rocksmith.
Yeah.
You may notice more tonal variation, but yeah, our whole thing was let's just get everybody to the same baseline so that we can find out whether you're accurately playing that note or not, because that's what you came here to learn was where do I put my fingers. So our system is really optimized for that.
Okay. And that I think I need to let people get on to the rest of their day. I want to thank both of you, Dan
I'm
Emmerich,
here.
Brian
Let's just
Pody.
keep rolling. It's fine.
Well, let's let Brian Pody go, because I feel like your meeting got canceled. No, but Brian Turner does have places to be.
Oh.
So we should let him go.
Well.
And probably some of our viewers might need to get to bed, especially if they're not.
Oh, that's
in the
true.
US. It's very
Bonjour,
late
Europe.
in some place. So again, Brian Pody, Dan Emmerich, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We may return to this conversation at a later point.
If nobody's bored yet, then sure.
If so, I've still got a bunch of questions that we didn't
alright.
get to. So I'll hold on to those, and if we come back to this conversation, we'll have some questions right off the bat to ask these two.
If
Be
they
back
stick
tomorrow.
around, I can go back down to my desk, jump in the chat room,
Sure.
and try to answer some of them.
So yeah, if you ask some questions and they didn't get answered, or if you just want to see some of the answers to these questions, or we might want to save it so that because
Okay,
that text won't be saved.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, once we go
So,
off the air. So
yeah.
you won't.
So let's keep a record.
All right.
But
Well, thank you for all the questions. I'm glad that this was useful or at least interesting to
It's
people.
good to get questions.
yeah, questions are good. I want to thank you all for joining us. We will be back on Wednesday for this week's stream, not Thursday. Wednesday, because we are having Thanksgiving here in the U.S. So we'll see you Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And as always, thanks for watching this month's Encore stream. I'm Doug Lilly. I'll see you soon.